And we're back with another episode of On the Record with Tiffany here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. And we can also be seen on the African American Network Television, where we have a local feel with a global reach. And I'm here today with my special guest, my handsome intellectual husband, Kevin L. Smith. And this time we're going to flip the script. Last week, we talked about what was my why for why I do what I do and gave you a little bit of insight about me. And now let's give you a little bit of insight about my co-host. So, Kevin, you're on.
I'm on. I love it. I love it. I love it. My baby's funny. Very, very funny. So, once again, we're continuing with that theme again with Tiffany, is that we are, what we're doing right now is we're trying to give you background and give people understanding of where we're coming from and where we are, with the idea and the theme being we have an upcoming program that we're going to be doing, that we're going to be a podcast that we're going to be conducting, more of a genealogical historical podcast. Because normally when you're the second great whatever particular relative you are, grandmother, aunt, uncle, whatever, most of the time you're about to be forgotten if you haven't already been forgotten, right? And so if someone wants to come back and look back at your history, what would you want them to know about you? Right. And so that's the theme, right, of kind of that the show will be. So we wanted to do that. So I was telling my wife and I were talking about it. I said, it's a good concept. Let's go from there, And so I have this list of people that I would want people to know that I knew. Right. And so I have this list of women that I would want people to know that I knew. And first one being my wife. Right. And some of the things that she's accomplished in just her personality and her family, et cetera. And just the way she was raised in her upbringing. And so now I believe, Tiffany, you're going to be interviewing me, right?
Yes.
About my upbringing. Right.
Yes. So tell me, what is your first memory? What was your first memory?
Oh, okay. My first memory. My first memory was being okay. So my background is very different from Tiffany's background, right? So Tiffany grew up she would tell you for a humble middle class beginning, right? Because she was project adjacent, right? I was not project adjacent. I was project/trailer park actualities where I lived. Right. So
he's the real deal Holyfield.
I am not, right. But even then, I grew up in a poor rural area, right. And so my first memory was of me being a kid, being actually, believe it or not, my great uncle. His name was Solomon Price Smith. And my first memory was me getting in his Chevrolet, right. And him telling me, and I'll give you the edited version, right. And I think I may have been 3 or 4. And he said, look, man, he goes, do not mess with the car. I want you to sit in this seat. I'm going to get out and run in. It was the equivalent of a convenience store, right? He's going to go in and get some coffee and some smokes, and he's going to be right back. And I was not to touch anything. Well, a little more on the ADD side. We wouldn't have called it that at the time, right? So I remember popping the car. It was one of those stick shifts that you put in gear. I remember popping that car in gear and rolling on back. Right. And I remember my uncle coming out going, oh, my God, and running after me, getting the car. And so that's my one memory that stands out from that viewpoint.
Hey, you're not telling that whole story, Kevin.
I got to leave out some parts of that because then after
you
that.
You got your butt spanked for doing that. and his uncle made him get on the floorboards of the car.
Yeah, so discipline was slightly different in 1970. I assume that was like 75, 74, right? So yes, I did get the heat came, right? The smoke came, as the kids say nowadays, right? So I was spanked, right? And I remember being spanked. I remember being taken home. He told my mom. And then from there,
he told his mom that Kevin was a little bad tail.
Yes, this is true, right? I was a bad butt, right? But I remember after that, I was thinking he hit me, and I remember sneaking in, and we lived in a small units,
Kevin was
right?
mad. That's
And
the part he's
so
not telling you. He was mad because
so
he hit.
I remember being spanked, right? I remember going back to my uncle and tossing a rock or something at him and getting back at him at that young age. So
you hit him in the face with a rock, Kevin.
Now Tiffany's making this story.
Hit him in the face with a rock. You need to be honest, Kevin L.
Yes. Okay. So let's tell the real deal, right? So I went back. I got some rocks. I got a handful of rocks, and so while he always took a nap at the same time every day. Normally about 3:00. And so I rolled in there and I took those rocks and I threw them at him and I hit him in the face with a rock. And I just remember that. And I ran off and I remember getting the spanking again. And he didn't spank me this time, right? He avoided me that time, but he never followed back up, and I didn't get to ride with him anymore. Learned a lot of things from my uncle, but he never let me ride anymore with him. That's like the clearest memory. But that's on that side growing up in a small town. So
you started off life as a planner, huh? You can't.
Yes, I was a
planner and a plotter.
Yeah, and I did. I planned that, right? I remember going through the details of that, thinking, okay, I know he goes to sleep at this particular time. I planned all of that particular thing. Now that Tiffany's putting me out there, and I forget that story there.
This is about the truth. It's about telling the truth. And that's what On the Record with Tiffany is. We try to dig down to the heart of what is happening in our community and in our community leaders. And Kevin Smith, since I know the truth about what the story is.
And that is the first memory that I always tell Tiffany that I remember was with my encounter with my Uncle Price. But the second, let's go with the second memory, is a better memory, right, Tiffany? The second thing that stands out in my mind, and
as your mama would say, tell the truth and shame the devil. Tell the truth, Kevin L. Smith.
So the other thing, right? I'm a big rap fan, right? I love rap music, and I love country music as well. But I'm a really big rap fan. And there's always a line you always hear these rappers say: "It was the streets that raised me," blah blah blah, right? It's always about their upbringing and their family life, right? But it was my small town that was involved in raising me and forming my views and values of the world, right? And one of the things that you'll get out of that with my Uncle Price is that he kind of reaped what he sowed a little bit, not because he spanked me, right? But one of the things that he always would say is stand tall, right? And be a man. That was a big thing. He was my great uncle, right? So that was stand tall, be a man. Right. And I remember, hey, he just spanked me. I got to stand tall, be a man. Right. But
and take this fool down.
Yes. But the other memory that Tiffany, I always share with Tiffany is always refer to, you have to have a reference point of where you were successful. And one of the things that I remember, and I may have been I don't know how old I was, however old you are when you play farm league, a little T-ball game, right? And it's another baseball story. And I remember being a small, scrawny kid, right? Not playing a lot because I wasn't very good, to be honest with you, right? I wasn't a very good player. And so I'd play my 2 innings. I think they required you to play 2 innings. Then I'd go sit out and I'd play around in the dugout, right? And that's what I did. But I remember that year, and I just wasn't a good player. And I thought it was something you either had or you didn't have. And I remember there was he was an older guy, probably in his 20s, late 30s, probably late 20s, named Monty Morrow, right? He still lives in my hometown. And he came, and for whatever reason, we had gotten out of practice on the team that I was on early. And it didn't matter anyway, because I wasn't going to get to play because I sucked, right? And in my head, I thought it was a genetic thing. There may have been some genetics to it, but I don't know. I wasn't very good, right? But I remember them needing, the team that he coached, right? Them needing a catcher, right? And so I got to play ball and practice with him. It was the additional practice that I got. And I would go to the Bears. That's what it was. And I'd go over, and I think the Pirates were older. Yeah, they were older. They were a little bit older than I was. And they needed a person to catch. And so I remember, I'm not very good at this. And I remember Monty saying, yo, man, it does not require a lot of talent. You get better by practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to get at this. And I was like, what? And so literally that after that whole season, I would play and my game got extremely better. And what I walked away from that is that the things that we think are talent, they're really not for most of us, right? You just have to put in the work and put in the effort and the hard work to get that done. And I mean, just that encounter changed a lot in my life. It changed my view on academics.
The trajectory of your life.
Yeah, it did. Right. And so it was that one small thing. And I don't think I've ever shared that with him or anyone else, but that one small thing of it's not talent. Right. And I really walked away with the idea that talent was overrated.
Tell them.
Yeah. So the next year,
you just left out all the stuff that actually mattered to you.
So the next year after that, right?
This is okay. Anyway, go ahead.
So the next year, right? So it was easier to interview, right, rather than to be the interviewee. Right?
Tell
so
them what you did, Kevin.
All right. So the next year. Right. So the next year after that, my baseball game just improved dramatically. It was like overnight. Right. And so I did extremely well. So well. Right.
Why?
Because of practice, Tiffany.
Yeah. Because you joined another team. You practiced with the other team. So you would go to the team that wouldn't let you play. And then you practiced with another team that would let you play. And that was how you got better.
Yeah, that is because
that's the importance of this.
Oh, that's the part of the story. Yeah. I actually thought through that part.
Tell that part, baby.
All right. So what I walked away with on that was
tell what you did.
Okay, I'm trying to. If you let me, you cut me off.
Okay, Black. Okay.
You're not a very good interviewee. Oh, that is a joke. All right. So from that point there, right, I would practice. I would go and I would practice with the Bears, right, which was a T-ball team. No, they weren't. It was a little league team, I think, right. And so I practiced with them, and then I would go and I would practice with Monty. And Monty told me if I'd come, right, and I'd practice with him, my game would get better, right? And he did, and it got better, just exactly like he said, right? He told me to come after that because of his work schedule and everything. I didn't realize this at the time, but those guys volunteered. So shout outs to all those people who are volunteering for their kids with T-ball and everything. They were doing what Monty did. And so long story short, so Monty told me if I'd come after I finished practicing with the Bears and I'd come and practice with him, that my game would get better and that he would coach me and make me better in the fundamental things, right? Like blocking the ball. There's a whole science behind this thing, right? And I would reach my potential, right? Wherever that was. And that's what I did. I mean, I probably put in 2-3 hours on that after playing with that team. And that taught me was that talent is overrated. It's the effort that you put into it, right? And that if you have someone who's willing to take the time and coach you, that, you can become better, at least reach your potential. And oftentimes where we think our potential is, it is far more than anything that we think it is, but we can't be limited by a narrative. And that's what Tiffany's trying to get me to share is that conclusion, is that it's a narrative that often holds most of us back most of the time. Right. And so me really looking into that, and I am personally thankful for that, for Monty and his efforts to this day. Right. Because that is the one thing that I draw on whenever I'm in a situation where I'm learning something new or the odds seem insurmountable. I always go back and remember that little scrawny little black kid playing with the Bears, right, in a T-ball team, and who sucked, right? And I thought it was talent. And remember going over and this man really taking time out of his time out of his schedule, to come and coach me and make me better in those fundamentals. And so that's always been my mindset, is I go back to that and I come back and I say, hey, am I missing something that's fundamental, right? And either, no matter what it is, right? Marriage, coaching, dealing with my children, whatever. Am I missing something fundamental in my execution of this? And to this day, I come back to that and I plan out and I think things through step by step by step. And it changed my paradigm on that one. And so now everything I approach it like that, is there's got to be something that I'm missing. It's not a IQ thing, right? Which is what a lot of people would have you believe. Sometimes it may be, but I haven't hit that point yet, right?
But there has to be a process to everything.
Yeah, there is a process.
The great thing to take from that story is that there is a process to everything. It's not that this guy coached you, or it was multifactorial. You had somebody that was willing to coach you. You were willing to put in the work, the repetition, the putting in 2 to 3 hours a day after you went and sat and did your time with the other coach.
Multifactorial, right? That's a fancy word.
It is multifactorial. You have to realize your worth and that you can do something. Once you decide I can do it, then you can.
Yeah. And that's true. Right. And so, I often tell Tiffany,
like we do have very different mindsets and takes on stuff, because like for me, if there's a piece of information, I always view learning something new the same way. If there is one person on earth who's learned it, I can learn it.
Yeah.
There is no barrier to entry for me.
Yeah, that's true. I do believe that. And that viewpoint is really changing my life. Right. And then you talk about, what's the other memory that you have. Right. I remember. And I'll say this to kind of give you a background, right? So Tiff grew up, from my viewpoint, very privileged, right?
Oh, Lord, here we go.
Hold on, right? Here we go. But she did. She grew up as a very privileged kid, right? Another part, that we often talk about is the environment that shapes you, right? You do have, like Tiffany said, you do have to put in the work. You have to work. You have to train. But it's also helps you if you're in an environment where you can, where you have the opportunity and you can see it, right? And so I remember being in the 4th or 5th grade, right? This is I always say that our lives are driven by the relationships that we have, right? Somewhere along the way, if you are successful in this world, this is my belief, right? Someone believed in you and someone invested in you. Yes, you had to put in the time, the work, and the effort, but someone somewhere gave you an opportunity. Someone somewhere helped you out, especially if you didn't have the knowledge or the skill set, right? So this is probably the second most important person. So that's Monty, right? These are people outside of my family, right? The second most important person outside of my family that had a huge impact on me was a lady named Kathy Spencer. And I guarantee you, right, if I hadn't met her, I wouldn't have went to Baylor. I wouldn't have met my wife. My life would have a different trajectory, right? So from Monty, I got this whole kind of, hey, put in the work. It's about a process. It's about effort, right? I got that. But then Kathy was really the one that kind of pointed me in that direction of, hey, here's how you do college. Right. And so I don't look country, but I'm very country. Right. So I'm a big guy into 4-H, FFA, FF, Future Farmers of America, and the 4-H system, which I really loved. And that's because Kathy, I'd say Kathy and Sheila Grubin. And you don't know these people, right? They're from my hometown. And so those two ladies. From
a little town called Rotan, Texas.
Yeah. So and, these dirt streets, these dirt roads raised me, right? These dirt roads raised me.
That's right.
The dirt roads made me who I am.
There's a lot of good people on dirt roads.
But beyond dirt roads, we don't live. That's a country stereotype, by the way. But those two people, Kathy and Sheila, but really Kathy introducing me and getting me into that whole process, right? Because I didn't know anybody Black who had gone to college. There were in my city. Now, I'm not going to say I'm unique. I'm just a special Black person, because I'm not. I'm just saying, as a kid, me looking around, I didn't see anyone who had gone to college, who had done any of the stuff, all that good stuff that Tiffany was telling you that her mother was putting in her. No, it wouldn't happen at my house, right? So, but Kathy really got me on the path and really started showing me the things that I needed to do to be considered for scholarships, to be considered to get into college, right?
Yeah, now some background on Kevin. Kevin, tell him about your parents, because, Kathy saw the intellectual capacity that Kevin had and the potential that he had. And he was coming from an environment where education was not the emphasis. No,
it wasn't, right? Yeah, so I'll give you some of that background, right? So Tiffany so basically, I was a stereotype, right? My mother was a teenager. She was 17, right? She did as best job she could.
She did a great job. She did a great job,
right? Mm-hmm. So, but she's a teenager. She was 17. I had two other brothers, right? Who I think it's probably 3-4 years apart from us. Eric's born in 74. Eric was born in 74. Anthony born in probably 79. So there's three of us, right? Three kids there. And so, I'm gonna call him my stepfather, because that way your listeners can understand who he is and where he came into my life. My stepfather, right, who I consider my father. My stepfather, a man named Abram Jones, came into our lives at a really critical time, and he was a hard worker, right? Wasn't perfect, right? Typical working class person, right? But he would work one time he had two and a half jobs, right, mm-hmm. to provide for us. And that left an impression. Yeah, so that left an impression on me, right? Is that you got to get, I won't say what he had all of these very pragmatic views on things, right? Like I remember one time somebody, there was a guy who got arrested, and I was like, oh my, we were saying how unfair it was. He's going to go to jail. They're doing it to him because he's black, et cetera, et cetera. And he would say, hey, I got to catch this story because I almost told the unedited version. He would say, hey, why do you think that fool went to jail? If you know that they're going to treat you like that and they're going to be unfair to you, don't commit crime. Problem solved. I was like, what? Don't commit crime if you're black? Yeah, don't commit crime if you're black, and you don't have to deal with the system. I was like, oh, it makes sense to me. But he had a very pragmatic view on things, right? And so he probably had a second grade education. Right. And so but that's about it.
He could sign his name, but he wasn't.
Yeah, he could sign his name, but he couldn't read his name. He couldn't read and write. And so that was the background. And so my dad's vision of us. And your mom dropped out of school. Yeah, mom dropped probably like 9th, 10th grade. Right. Mm-hmm. She could tell you, she was fast running them streets, right? And
he wasn't coming from a background with education.
Yeah, I didn't get extra homework, right? Tiffany got extra words and all of that stuff. I didn't get any of that.
Power books.
No, and so my life was pretty much, and I think about it now, right? I was very fortunate, right? One, fortunate. Two, I had a lot of drive. I just didn't know it. Most of the stuff that I came up with, right, was like, So I learned from Monday, I got to figure out what the basics are. So any subject that I was having difficulty with, I had to figure out what the basics were. Like, oh, let me go back and I'd have to examine, okay, I need to know this, this, and this, figure this part out. So I was really figuring it out as I went. So
let me stop you there, babe, because, that's something to look at. You had drive. Within you had a personal empowerment that said, hey, I don't know what's different. I don't know why there's more to life, but I know that there is more to life and I can find it. If somebody else has experienced it, I can figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. And that's what we're looking at today here on the Record with Tiffany. We're looking at our past so we can talk to you a little bit about what's going to happen in the future and where we're taking on the Record with Tiffany. You're listening to us here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and we can be seen on the African American Network Television, where we have a local feel and a global reach. And come back and listen to us some more as we talk about our host, Kevin L. Smith. And we're back with another episode of On the Record with Tiffany here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. And we can also be seen on the African American Network television, where we have a local feel with a global reach. And we're exploring the life of Kevin L. Smith, my co-host and partner in crime and life. I should say partner in business and life. So we left off talking about what drives you.
What drives me, right?
Why? Tell us what drives you. What is the principle that drives Kevin L. Smith?
All right. So I have this just over time, right? And I that I've collected sort of these 4 principles, right? Take ownership, right? Which means you own it, right? Take ownership that anything that happens to me in my life, right? I can figure it out. It's mine, right? So take ownership, right? Have some follow up and follow through. And what I mean by that is there are things that happen is that you got to follow up on, you got to follow through with, right? So I'll give you an example, right? So let's say you have to pay your light bill. This is a very practical matter, right? So you submitted, but in the process of you calling, you thought your number went through, but it didn't, and just something happened, right? So follow up and follow through is I've got to call back and make sure the bill got paid. Right? It doesn't matter what happened on their end. Their system could have been messed up, whatever. Doesn't matter. Right? I own that. It's mine. I got to follow up with that and got to follow through and make sure it's done. So ownership, follow through, right? And can I say this? And you got to figure crap out. That was a big thing with my dad was figure this crap out, right? And you can substitute given what I just told you about my dad's educational level and that he was a working poor man, right? And I never will forget this one time. And I don't know what game it was. There was whatever rendition of PlayStation or Xbox was at the time, right? And I remember it was an Atari, right? And it was old, right? But I remember I was going to get one for like $50. And for whatever reason, I called Jonesy and that's what we referred to my father as. Everyone called him Jones or Jonesy. That's what we called him by his last name, right? And so whatever it was, he must have been feeling a good mood or had a good payday or something. I don't know. He promised me the $50 to get it. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. He's giving me the money, right? Which was like never happened, right? He would say, get out there and work for it. But anyway, it came time for the $50. And he only gave me 25, right? And I tell my kids this story, right? And I was like, but you promised me 50. He only gave me 25. Now, $25 was quite a bit of money. Like that was probably a little bit in the 80s, other side of the 80s. And he said, and I got to give you the cleaner rendition. And he says, listen, fool, figure it out. You got 25. Here's $25. You don't want it? I'm like, I'll take it. That's what I thought. Now here, take the 25 and go figure that crap out, right? So, and I figured it out, right? I took the 25, I went and I got out there, I borrowed a lawnmower, I mowed some lawns, got the other 20, and then I forgot how I got the other 5. I think I talked the person down and got the games, right? But he was really big into figuring it out, right? Go out there and figure that crap out. And so those are the 3 things, if you will, that I've always kind of held dear, right? Take ownership, follow up and follow through, and figure it out, right? There's somebody out there. There's something you got to figure out. You got to go and figure the system out that you're trying to get involved with. And those are really the big 4, if you will, that I've always lived by is just figure it out, right? Take ownership, follow through, and figure it out. And so a lot of emphasis on that, really more so from him than my mom. My mom was always, oh, that's okay, baby. It'll be all right. And he was just like, hell no, it's not going to be all right. You got to fix it, right? Because he was
together.
he had a lot of emphasis on being a Black man in America. And that was a big chant of his. And is that you're Black, you're in America. You got to figure this out. Right. If you don't want to, if you don't want to have to deal with the police, don't do stuff that get you in where you have to have encounters with them. Right. My
dad's thing was, I don't pick people up from jail. So if anybody in this house ends up going to jail. Don't call me. I don't know who you call. But don't you call me. So we already knew that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, it wasn't going to work, right? And the other thing that I talk about, the community that I grew up in was a small town where, I had these influential people around me everywhere. Right. And I had to put in the work. Right. But my success really wasn't, it was my success. I did work hard. I put in the work, but I had people around me giving me opportunity, providing insight and coaching, right, where needed is what we would call it now. Right. I shared the story of Monty Morrow. I shared the story of Kathy Spencer. I mean, and I'm forever grateful to those individuals. Right. And I have an uncle. I'll call him my uncle. He was a drug dealer, right? Let's just say what it was, right? And this is before he always pushed pills and marijuana and stuff like that, right? None of the hard stuff is what he would justify it with. But I always share the story with Tiffany. And because my brain operates I want to know how it works, right? How do I do it? Step one, right? And people are like, oh, no, you got to be, no, for me, it's got to be, how do I do it very technically, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is about the time that crack was coming into the communities. And so, and I didn't deal drugs, not because I was scared of my father, which I was kind of scared, but I could get through that, right? I didn't deal drugs because I couldn't figure out how to get the money out of it, right? And this is a story that people may not want to know, but that's why, because I sat down, I thought through it, and I remember my uncle saying, hey guys, you don't want to be involved with this. This is a drug dealer telling me, hey guys, you don't want to be involved with this. And I remember him breaking down. And now as I'm older, I would say the economics of it, right? The economics of it, right, is that the money would be coming in too fast. You couldn't get it through the system quick enough, right? And you had to be violent if you were going to make it in this, and dealing this stuff. You had to be violent, right? And I remember him saying that, man, that just shook me to the core, and just walking through. And I thought through all of the ways that it could go wrong, right? I was thinking of the upside.
People die too.
And I saw people die, people get killed, right? And I saw people like Tiffany's father confront people, right? We lived West Texas, where I lived in West Texas, and Tiffany was in Beaumont. It was in greatly vast distance between us, right? But there, so I had that idea in my head, and he always kind of, in a weird kind of way, my uncle quoted the scripture, count the cost, right? Count the cost. And, if this is where you want to go, you better count the cost, right? And is it worth it? And I just remember being shaken about that. And I was just like, no, it's not worth it, because all of the potential downsides. And that doesn't mean everyone that he had that conversation with listened to him, because they figured they could beat the cost. But I just knew the odds were stacked against you. Right. And I didn't, and it just, I would think.
And that was just the cost. That was just the cost in terms of, would you go free? Would you not? That wasn't even thinking about the spiritual cost. What is it doing to your soul that you would unleash something so devastating into people's lives? Like that hadn't even entered into the.
No, that hadn't entered into the picture, right? Because all we were thinking about at that time was, hey, how do I get paid? Right? How does my life get better? Right? So that's why I'm getting all this really good information. That was the narrative
that the drug dealers were offering to everybody.
Well,
so make money,
a little bit different than that.
Better.
See, now, so here's a different side of it, right? So that's, from the outside, right? From you, but from me, right? It was make your life better. It was get a fast life, right? Get all this additional stuff, right? The consequences be damned, right? And I couldn't wrap my head around, and it wasn't that I was so much better than anyone else. It wasn't that, hey, I was better than this guy who went. No, I could have easily gone down that path, right? But fortunate for me is that in the area that I lived, I was fortunate enough, wanted to be smart. I would say smart, right? I didn't use that term. I used hardworking, because this is what I did. I worked hard, and I often saw smart as you got it instantly. And I didn't get anything instantly. I had to figure it out.
But you worked hard and got good grades.
But I got it, right? And I got good grades. And
you were salutatorian.
And I had people around me that that gave me the opportunity do good and to strive, right? And so I don't know if I would go so far as to say it takes a village to raise a family, but I do appreciate my hometown. I do appreciate
your hometown was definitely that village scenario.
Yeah, and I'd have to say my county, not my town, because and no one, you only get this if you're from a small town, right? There's probably 10 miles between my hometown, Monroe 10, and a little city called, not even a city, a town called Roby, right? So those two places influenced me, and it would be Fisher County, right? That place influenced me, gave me the values that I have. And I'm forever grateful. And my girls ask me about it. Girls ask us about it all the time. And I say, man, I wish you could be raised in a small town. Doesn't mean we don't have problems. Doesn't mean they don't have problems right now. But I always say, those are my people, right? And when I say that, some people go, oh, are you only talking about Black people? No, I'm talking about rural people. Those are my people, Black and white. And I understand it.
Because all those people that you mentioned, Kathy Spencer and all of those guys, they're not Black, they're all white.
Yeah, all white. Yeah.
It's, the thing of this whole narrative that we have going in the country right now, like everybody's divided. That's not a true picture of what happens on a day-to-day in the United States and in small rural towns. There's a lot of love for the town, love for the culture of the town, and love for the people in the town that transcends race and those boundaries that we put on ourselves.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean there's not issues of racism there. Right. It doesn't mean that, but it means
that people deal with them in a realistic way.
Yeah. And it's a very practical way. Right. There isn't these abstractions that people have. Like one of my conflicts that I have with a lot of people is the abstraction called white supremacy. I'm like, okay, right? Because from my viewpoint, if we can define something, like we want to address a policy, I can address a policy, right? But the idea of an abstraction as broad as white supremacy is like, well, how do we know if we've resolved it, right? Does the ball keep moving, right? Right. But if you tell me you can give examples of policies, we can focus and figure out how to change a policy.
Yeah,
not so much
you can abstractions. Change. When people say, "Oh, you can't legislate the hearts of men," you can't legislate the hearts of men. You can legislate the actions, though.
You can,
and you can do that through policy, but some of the things that people assign to racism are just ignorance. Like there are a lot of people that just say stupid stuff
all the time. And I'll be honest with you,
they're not saying it from any sort of like I was talking to somebody and she's over 80 years old, so you already know that she can say whatever she wants to say, because to me, once you hit 70, that's it. If you want to say what you want, whatever you want to say, I'll listen to you. Well, some of what she says doesn't go along with what is PC. Is she saying this stuff to be malicious? No. People just say stuff that doesn't make sense. Is she racist? No. Stupid sometimes, yes.
But it's a culture, right? But the thing that I appreciate the most about my hometown, even in the midst of all of that there, right, is that I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate that there were values, right? Now, I'll tell you about the uncle that was telling me the story wasn't the great uncle that I pulled a car out of, but there was a sense of mentorship, right? I only know this now because I'm looking back, right? I didn't know it at the time, right? But a sense of mentorship that was there that wasn't there before. And you could always tell the people who were going to make it 9 times out of 10, right, in our community. And it was generally those who had people around them and those who would listen to the people around them, right? Because my dad would say, nothing makes a soft behind like a hard head, right? And what he meant by that was that if you don't listen to people who are telling you the right thing to do, right, you're going to suffer the consequences, right? Does that mean and I just remember that, right? So 3 things I remember about my father gave me, right? In terms of his little working man wisdoms, right? was figure crap out, right? That was the big one there. Figure crap out, right? And if you don't want issues with the police, don't be a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a ride to me. I still remember.
No
that.
more talk. Don't be a criminal.
And then right before I went to college, I got into Baylor, and we're packing up my stuff, right? Let me tell you, they packed up all my stuff, right? It was all there, right? They packed it all up in the car. And I remember, and I always tell the story a little bit different, but since I'm on the radio, I'm going to tell the truth on this one, Tiffany. And I remember him right before we left to go to Waco, Texas. I remember in my hometown, he always got up super early, went to the Dairy Queen, had coffee, right? I was a coffee shop, right? Long before Starbucks. I remember us sitting there and him saying essentially, hey, you're a pretty smart guy, right? You've done well for yourself. People like you, right? And you've gotten into college. He's like, don't F this up, because if you get in any trouble and go to jail, I can't help you. You're on your own, right? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah. And that was it. When I tell Tiffany that conversation and I tell my girls, they were like, what kind of conversation is that? Oh my God. But to me, that conversation was a very real and straight conversation, right? Was that, hey, don't blow this opportunity, right? And I just remember that staying out in my head, right? And I was grateful for that information. Now, he and I, we butted heads a lot, but those little colloquialisms always kind of stood out in my head about him from that part there. And so different lifestyle, but we're coming up growing up in a rural town, America, right, where there was opportunity. Now that was my experience, right? I have friends who had a completely different experience with the world there, right? And I wouldn't give you you could tell from my dad, me telling you the things about my dad, he also had a lot of opinions about that. But the other thing that I was really grateful for my small hometown, right? So you see that it wasn't just my family that had an impact on me, but it was my town that had an impact on me. So the other two things I'm really grateful for. One, I went to a small Baptist church, Black Baptist church, right? And that's important. I say Black Baptist church. And I regret that I didn't get to leverage some of this, right? And so this was probably the 80s, the early 80s, right? So I was probably third, fourth grade. And we had people there who were 70, 80, 90s, right? So they're born at the turn of the century, some in the late 1800s, and just really missing out on the wisdom that those individuals had, right? And I remember there was a lady named Miss Pearl. Miss Pearl probably used to be a gangster, but she was a wonderful lady. But she kind of had thoughts along my with my father, right? You got to work hard. If you want to get in trouble, don't be in trouble, right? Which that was always don't want to get in trouble, don't be in trouble. Took me a while to wrap my head around that one. And the Carringtons, right, who was the pastor of the church, and just the investment and time that they put in. But I was young. I didn't realize the time that we were living in, right, at that time, right? And then just the societal shifts that had been made. So.
Well, when people are living through historic moments, it's just a regular moment in your life. You're not, as a kid, when we got on the plane and went off to Italy, and my mom said, when you get off this plane, you can be whoever you want to be. Decide who that's going to be.
Did you hear that? That plane, the plane, and you went to Italy, right?
Yeah, okay.
But my wife says she didn't have a privilege to lie.
Shut it down. Let me finish my statement, Black person. Let me finish my statement. See, you're getting rowdy. So, when I had this opportunity to go off to boarding school, and my mom and dad were moving.
An elite boarding school.
Yes, my mom and dad were moving to Saudi Arabia, and all that studying and all that extra homework for mama was coming to fruition. I was knocking it out of the park on all kinds of standardized tests and all of these things, and so was my brother. Like, we were always winning something, some award, some this, that, or the other, and so fine, we got this opportunity to go overseas, and my mother made that opportunity. I don't want to diminish what what was done there by my mom, because my mom was like, I think you could go to one of the best schools in Europe, and I'm going to look for them. And so she started looking for, and this was pre internet and all of that stuff. This, so mama was just searching.
Yeah, she did. She did a good job.
She did a good job.
And one of the things that I admired about your mom, now listen, I always say this, and I don't mean any disrespect, is that we had our issues, me and Miss J. But the one thing that I always respected by her is that she embodied those things that I just described. She always took ownership.
Yep.
Right. She had amazing follow-up and follow-through, almost to the point of nagging and annoyance, but she did it, right? Yep. And she figured it out. That was, I mean, those are the things I admired about her, right? That no matter what, is that those four things, I mean, she figured it out. And that story of how they got into this, she and her brother got into the elite school, right, is a testimony of her follow-up and follow through with that. And so those are the things that I've seen that make people successful. And you'll see that with Tiffany. Sorry to cut you off, babe.
So I was going from being a few streets over from the projects to this school, being dropped off at this really
a few streets off from the projects. Really?
Shut up, Kevin. Being dropped off at this school, where they had people coming to school with drivers and they had names and notoriety within within Italy,
and internationally as well.
And right? Internationally, yeah. And so, owners of what is equivalent to all of the Burger Kings in the United States, Big Burg, their kids were there.
How would you say that impacted your interaction with people?
Right? Oh, it changed my life. And Mama's statement: be who you want to be. Don't let anything limit what you think or what you feel about yourself. Be who you want to be, baby. You can be everything you want to be.
And then giving you practical advice on that. That wasn't just some blowing smoke up your butt routine, right? Which I think people do a lot, right? But giving practical steps in that, right?
Yep.
And for me, it's always got to be about practical steps, right? And you see that. But go on with that. I did
exactly that. That's what I did. That's what my brother did. And now you see where that's taken each one of our lives. I have wonderful siblings. My brother is the winningest attorney in the state of Texas in his specialty. My sister graduated from the top of her class from West Point. The baby, Nikki, I know she's not a baby. She's 25. She's not a baby. She graduated from the top of her class at Villanova. Four kids from the same family, African-American family. And if you look at anything statistically, it would say that somebody should be in jail.
Yeah. But think about that though, right? So that's my wife's life, and and that we are fortunate to be a part of. But mine didn't have that. I didn't see anybody like that. Right?
And what are we saying? That from these two different sets of lives, we had some commonalities. We believed we could do it.
I worked out and I was in really good shape, and I had like abs of steel back in the day. So that's what helps me.
We believed we could achieve. We believed that if somebody else had learned it, we could learn it.
That's true.
And we got out there and hustled and did the work. Hustled not in the today's sense. Oh, let's go run some game on somebody. We got out there and put in the hard work.
Yeah.
To get what we wanted. It can be done.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you come from. And the time has flown by today. And I hope you learned a little bit more about Kevin and about me and where we're going to take you on this journey, because we're looking at the fact that you can come from completely different backgrounds, as Kevin and I do, and arrive at whatever place you want to arrive at. Because, you're born in the greatest country in the world, in the United States of America. This is the greatest country in the world. We don't have to make it great again. It's great right now. We have our flaws, just like everyone else, but you're in the greatest place. and the greatest place for opportunity. So what can you do today? Choose something different. If you don't like where you're at, choose something different. The opportunities will come. The path will become enlightened to you. Choose something different, because we're more alike than we are different. The one thing that we have to do is make a choice. And you've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany, where we believe you're more alike than you are different, and figure crap out. Here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer and on the African American Network Television.